Hey, how was your day?
Wait, are you going first?
I'm actually not hearing you very well now. You're kind of
Okay. Okay.
I hear you
How
fine
about how
now.
about now? How about now? Okay, I think I just need to hold the
Great.
microphone here.
I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name actually.
Yep.
Arik.
Arik. So yeah, it's Eric with an
Nice to meet
R
you, Arik.
sound. You too,
You
Julian?
got it right.
At least I'm assuming that's the way I pronounce Julian.
So, you're out in
Yeah,
LA.
okay. Yep. Yeah, actually I'm on break from school, which is always pleasant.
That is a
Not
great feeling.
have to do
You're
anything.
still just a little bit muffled.
It is. Yeah, okay. So I'll just
Okay.
hold it
Well,
right here then.
I'm ready to start if you are, of course.
Yep. Anytime.
So, the day after, or maybe the day of, I think it was December 7th when Trump announced this. Benjamin Netanyahu said that Jerusalem has always been Israel's capital. The problem being that when Israel was founded in 1947, Jerusalem wasn't their capital. It was an international city. So I think that illustrates the problem here to begin with, because the problem that we're actually talking about, it starts in 1995 with the Oslo Accords. The Jerusalem Embassy Act move was in part to do with the Oslo Accord. Well, it is part of the Oslo Accords. It's really on which side you're on. Some people say that it was done on purpose to make sure that they failed. Other people would say that it was just to be sure that Jerusalem would be the capital. Either way, though, the Oslo Accords fell apart. This was supposed to happen in 1999, around the same time that I graduated high school. And so nothing's happened. So the peace process hasn't moved forward. So we're seeing this happen now without the peace process moving forward. So a lot of people are worried because they're looking at this as an end to the end of the peace process, whether that be a two-state or a one-state or negotiated one-state solution, because the Palestinians, just real quick, Jerusalem is that the western half of it is the eastern half of it is occupied, and the western half of it was annexed. And I've actually learned this. Well, I learned since my last debate about this is I didn't realize that in 1980 when it was annexed, because it was taken in the 1948 war, but in 1980 when it was annexed, and of course it was occupied before that, and it's always been illegal. They actually changed the Green Line again, so it actually took some more Arab land, and that does include Christians. So, but I'm not really trying to take the history back far here. I'm just trying to illustrate the problem is that this is supposed to be because of the Oslo Accords, and the peace process wasn't met. So the problem that it's supposed to achieve or solve, actually, it was never. Yeah, there's nothing achieved by it. So it's the end of the peace process, uh, basically, and that's the problem. So I'm just trying to be a little more straightforward with this one, and I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Um, I think that like a lot of it is functioned within the Oslo Accords. Like a lot of the roots are there. And to ask, why the Oslo Accords failed is, a whole nother debate. Why both sides basically agreed to it then walked away is a question that will take far more than the 45 minutes that we have to discuss this. Um, One thing I do find interesting about both sides of the problem is that most people agree that Israel at least has the right to West Jerusalem, because that's what the 1947 agreement was. They get West Jerusalem and not necessarily the East Jerusalem holy sites, which are the place that everyone really felt. And so the question of West Jerusalem isn't so much a question at all. It's the fact that Israel also claims East Jerusalem as part of the capital. That's where the majority of the
I
discussion
don't care
revolves
about
around.
West
No one
Jerusalem.
really cares about West Jerusalem.
Yes,
It's suburbs. Yeah, it's a yeah, yeah. It's like it's
mm-hmm.
it's a it's almost not Jerusalem in that sense. In the sense that there's no historical identity, there's no cultural identity. Um, People care really about the Temple Mount, if that's really what it comes down to. Who owns a couple acres in the middle of Jerusalem that are probably the most historically, culturally significant acres in the entire world? Um, and so the fact that you have Israel claiming it and you have the Palestinians claiming it makes for a very tense situation. Um, the fact that the United States policy is still that Israel doesn't exist in East Jerusalem legally. The the Trump administration has said that they are moving the embassy to Jerusalem, but they never went back on the East Jerusalem the question of East Jerusalem. U.S. policy and UN policy remains that East Jerusalem is Israel doesn't get access to it, which the question of why did Trump do it, especially the embassy is going to be located in West Jerusalem and not in East Jerusalem, which Israel still claims. So it's almost like everything that it just like this move just makes it more confusing. Instead of like a move like this would be expected to set like a firm line of the U.S. announcing that East Jerusalem is part of Israel. Instead, they're doing both at the same time. They're both moving the embassy, and they're still saying East Jerusalem isn't part of Israel, which just serves to make the
You're a little muted. I think
more
we're actually
confusing
agreeing
if
on here
anything.
because I'm not really concerned with West Jerusalem, but there is a little bit of a problem with the Green Line being moved. I don't think, if we're really talking about a two-state or a one-state negotiated solution, I don't think we can really change that because the people are there. So I think we're on the same page with West Jerusalem. With East Jerusalem, you were kind of going in and out. Are you saying that that's part of Trump moving the embassy, or is it not?
I honestly can't tell. The problem with this invasion in particular is that you can't really tell them why something happened. Since in the speech, all Trump said was that he's moving it because it's been the historical capital. But he didn't answer the West Jerusalem East Jerusalem problem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is the problem, and that's what the upset is about.
Israel gets West Jerusalem.
I'm not worried about West Jerusalem. I mean, in 48 and 1980,
the embassy moving change anything? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about West Jerusalem. I mean, I don't want to. It is true though, in 1948 and 1980 that they lost. That wasn't part of the peace plan, and they lost that. The Green Line was moved in 1980, but I'm not really concerned about that. Like I realize that the people who live there, that's a Jewish community now. So I think democratically thinking, if they want to be part of Israel, like that's not a bad idea. It's my concern is the peace process and what this does for the peace process and how it doesn't solve the problem that it was created for. And with the east side, I mean, it's not annexed into Israel, but I read the language right before we did the debate just to make sure I was fresh on it, and it does say an undivided Jerusalem. So, but the interesting thing is that it actually says that it must maintain the status quo of the holy sites. So it leaves the holy sites out of it. I think the people there are concerned with the holy sites, and I know that other Arab countries and Muslim countries are concerned with the holy sites, and that includes the Christian community there as well. But it's basically the big problem is that it says an undivided Jerusalem, and the eastern half of it has been occupied since 1967, and there's some problems with that with the whole apartheid debate. One thing that I also learned recently is I didn't realize that the people with permanent residency, because they're not civilians, even though they own property there, they're not civilians. Even though they are property owners and they're family of support for many generations, that they're actually not allowed to vote in the Israeli elections, whereas the people within their green proper lines are allowed to vote in elections. That was something that I learned. So they don't have a lot of rights, and they're actually kind of boxed in because all the settlements are around it on the eastern side. Because I mean, they're definitely so. I mean, just going back to what Benjamin Netanyahu said, it's always been our capital, and now now the America is recognizing that, whereas before we were supposed to, this was supposed to be part of a peace process because we were supposed to recognize the peace process, and that's what the UN is doing too. And the UN sees the annexation in 1980 is illegal, and the occupation since 48, the occupation after 48 before then is illegal as well. So the UN really isn't in agreement, but I think that you are probably right that at the UN they're not really contesting that. Like they want a peace plan and they're fine with that being the capital in the peace plan.
Yeah. The thing that makes it difficult is that Trump's speech specifically says that he's not taking a position on the boundaries of sovereignty or Jerusalem or the issue of contested borders. So as far as the peace process goes, it's very difficult to say what, since it is so fresh. Likely we're going to see the same thing that happened back in the 1980s when the Green Line was moved and we first saw the occupation of East Jerusalem, where you have like some members of the Palestinian community say, okay, this really changes nothing, and you'll have some members say this changes everything. And the question is, which of those two groups will have the bigger voice? Which group is going to be the one that says, let's continue on. The embassy moving hasn't really changed anything as far as U.S. stance on this. And then you'll have others who say, no, it does have a very big stance on this. So I think as far as the peace plan goes, it all depends on which of those two groups comes out on top. Whether it'll be the group that says, it isn't possible. Because regarding this, is on the boundaries, which makes it even a mess.
You're getting really muffled again. Can you still hear me all right?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Do I need to keep it like this close all the time?
You may have to. You actually lost your picture.
Okay.
If you refresh it, it'll help. I won't end the debate.
Okay.
It'll help that. It may help that.
Okay.
Just trying to be patient here. Okay, I can see you again. Yeah, it's not restarting the debate. It makes that beeping noise. So you're saying that it really comes to which group is on top, and and because it doesn't say where the line should, it doesn't change the line in the language. That's what you're saying. That comes down to which group is on top in the future because the language does not move the line. Are you still able to hear me?
The group of Palestine, there's essentially within each of those communities. Yeah, I can hear you. It essentially comes down to that there's two groups within Israel and Palestine. One group for each says there can never be peace until they are eliminated.
Is that everyone in each one of those groups?
The other group says can absolutely be peace. We can coexist.
Is that everyone in that group?
I would say that there's it's not a binary. There's definitely there's definitely a spectrum. But as far as leaders, and you can absolutely move between the two groups. Like Yasser Arafat started on the "we can't have any peace" group, and then he moved to the "yes, we can't have peace" group. I think that it'll be roughly similar to what happened after 1999, when the Senate resolution to move the embassy to Jerusalem was first passed. There are Palestinians then who said there can't be peace because everyone expected the move to happen immediately.
Let me go ahead and answer your question, because you say it comes down to which group comes out on top. The thing is, the language says an undivided Jerusalem, and it's been occupied since 1967, and the annexation just makes it more likely, especially with the language that it's, and this Jerusalem move, this act from 1995, saying that it's undivided. So it suggests that Jerusalem is, that it's all one thing, and that it's part of, and the language says is Israel. It doesn't say. Of course, that could include that. I guess that could include a negotiated one state. But the problem, and I already said this, it wasn't really a point. It was just kind of thrown in, is that the eastern half, the Al Qud side, the eastern half, that's already blocked in by settlements. So it's really hard to imagine that the line would, that there would, the line would move. It would, I mean, it would have to move further east because it can't be inside. I mean, it would have to be a pocket within for them, for the Palestinians to have anything. And I think the language saying that this must maintain the status quo of the holy sites, because that would be a problem for the both Israel and the United States. And that's where the Arab, for instance, the Arab League, led by Saudi Arabia, they it's a group of Arab nations that not only recognize Israel, they're committed to a peace plan. The Saudis actually have a peace plan that they'd like to implement. I don't. It's a two-state solution. I don't know too much about it, but anyway, they're upset at the United States about this. So it's costing the United States. But I think that we already know which group is going to come out on top. And I mean, even that goes back to how I started the debate with Netanyahu saying Jerusalem has always been our capital, in spite of the fact that when Israel was created, it was an international city. So it's not really a capital of. It's really not supposed to be the capital of anywhere. And there's one more thing I like to say is that you said it would be a separate debate for us to talk about why the peace talk failed. I'm not contesting that, but the thing that's important about the Oslo Accords and why they failed is that the Palestinians, it's, a lot of people believe that their capital would be in East Jerusalem. It's not. It's further east. It's in Ramallah. It's an eastern suburb called Ramallah. It's not in eastern Israel. So that was the biggest problem. There's many other good ones, or not a good problem, but a good problem to cite. Still there?
I think, yes. In an ideal world, you would see both the Palestinians and the Israelis. They're two state, one state. The United States is the best, but that might change. The problem becomes that is is going to injure the far elements, and those far right elements have a very strong voice within either community. I think as long as in West Jerusalem, you won't see too much of a problem. If the embassy is located in Jerusalem, you have a big problem. Where those tensions rise and the peace process will probably be damaged forever. I do agree with you on that. That if an embassy is located in East Jerusalem, it's all over. Like you'll never see a peace process anytime soon. If an embassy is located in West Jerusalem, it's possible you'll still see peace. In fact, I think it's likely because to why Oslo failed. A big reason different goals. I think they wanted a pair of high because they now do that piece so they could try to it. And I with where if it stays in West Jerusalem and you're the same level of breakdown as you did before. if it moves to East Jerusalem, or if it's built in East Jerusalem, you're going to see that breakdown happen. That is in the 60 plus year national policy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen. So instead of the idea of like an independent thing, we'll have to take one to let what you do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, obviously, we started talking about the Oslo Accords. We started another debate, and I don't want to do that. But there are some good. I think the other reasons, just to throw them out there, why I couldn't quite hear why you said that it failed. But the one that's most relevant here is that the language of the Jerusalem Act in 1995 says an undivided Jerusalem, and what was offered to the Palestinians was not actually a capital in Jerusalem. It was a capital east of Jerusalem. It moved the line east into a suburb called Ramallah, and that's where their government is now. That was a big problem. And then, of course, the other ones were the resources and freedom, the media, freedom of the press. There wasn't any freedom of the press. And Israel still controlled all the resources. It was really more of a negotiated one-state solution or like a binational solution. But the Palestinians, I mean, they definitely wanted to negotiate for more. It just made more sense. But yeah, I'll probably start in another debate. But I just want to make sure I mentioned that. I don't believe that an international city is possible at this point. I think you're definitely right that that's an irrelevant goal. And of course, there were Arab citizens in West Jerusalem who lost their homes and stuff. I hope that they're accounted for those. This is in West Jerusalem, but I don't have a problem with West Jerusalem being the capital, which really kind of moves along to I guess you say that in an ideal way they could live together, but the thing is that there's no reason under the model of democracy that the UN wants and what the United States wants and what's really true democracy. It really would have to be. It can be one state, I think, in everywhere, as opposed to the way that it's broken up now, because that's the problem this is my opinion. I'm just saying that I think it really needs to be a negotiated one state solution at this point, especially. I mean, I know that what Donald Trump's talking about and what Bill Clinton started, it doesn't contest the old city, and that Donald Trump saying that we must maintain the status quo there. But that's the big problem, is that, especially when you're talking about a peace, when you want to talk about peace, is that Jerusalem's right in the middle of the thing. And that's what the people are most upset about. And it's really been the fight over Jerusalem that's made other states, the Arab states, the neighboring states. That's the thing. It's even more so than the Palestinians that they're upset about, or even like Iran, for example, says that they would recognize Israel. They would just stop doing what they're doing in Jerusalem. And they might, I think they say the Palestinians too. So not all of them really even include the Palestinians. But so it's the heart of the problem. And I think really to get to the solution, I don't think it's really wishy-washy to think, because that's what happened here in the United States with the native population and other areas with the native population. I did a debate on here where the whole debate about was it founded by terrorism or not, and the counter argument was, well, it's colonization, which so it's colonization. And I had some trouble convincing that person. I tried to convince them that he might have a point about it. I still don't really agree with him, but yeah, I saw where he's coming from. But if you want to talk about it as colonization, it would have to end the same way that it did here in the United States. And it kind of happened slowly but surely. The Indians, I don't even think they could even, or the native population here couldn't even vote till 1917. And Israel controls 96% of the land. If you look at a map, It's 96%. Just Google the map. So it's pretty much there's a strong comparison to between the way the land splits up with the actual green lines, not the 67 one where they are now, to what it would look like for the Native Americans. Of course, it's a lot smaller, but and it's all built up around Jerusalem because it's settled around East Jerusalem, so it's really blocked in. So I mean, it is one state already. I think is what it comes down to. And Donald Trump has actually said that he would look at it as one state. John Kerry called it one state as well, but he because he was on it when he was unable to fail when he failed to negotiate his own peace deal, he called it one state. So it really is one state. There needs to be a negotiated solution. I just don't think it's too much to ask. Elon Pape, he's a popular voice on the Palestinian side or for this, I suppose, and he claims, and he is Israeli, and he actually even lives in Israel. He's a professor there. He claims that the goal that Israel wants is the same thing that's within the Green Line, that Israel proper, where the population is 75% Jewish, and the minority Arab population is only 25%. And when they get to that number, that's when they'll just go ahead and annex everything, and it would be the same way that it is now on the Knesset rules. It would just apply to everywhere. But that's their goal, and the thing is they can't get there. It's not possible at this point, because it's if you take all the land, and this includes all the Palestinian territories, all of historic Palestine from the river to the sea, it's split. The population split is about 50-50, and the birth rate on both sides is about the same. So I mean, we could be on our deathbeds and this hasn't changed. I think with that kind of expectation, and that's really the problem. I mean, I think the Palestinians, like, it's really more of the Arab world and the way that affects the UN and the United States, Jerusalem, even because of the Palestinians. A lot of them, they say that the right to return is actually their big thing. But I'm starting to go on, so just go ahead and let you.
Yeah. I think that we're getting very mixed messages from the United States with regard to the undivided Jerusalem thing. Because the original act, as you said, did contain that language, an undivided Jerusalem. But then Trump's statement, where he makes the announcement, said he is flexible on that issue, which seemed to almost soften the original act. And I think we're starting to see more acceptance of a shared Jerusalem, on the Israeli side, at least, particularly with the rise of certain more left-leaning parties than before. That's slowly becoming more accepted among Israelis and among American Zionists in particular. And that's relevant because those are the ones who donate a lot of money to American politicians, who then essentially make these kinds of decisions. So I think it is likely that that hopefully we will see a shared Jerusalem soon. The state of whether it's a one state or two state solution might never actually be decided. It might forever remain in limbo. But the Jerusalem question, I think, will shortly, in terms of socioeconomic shortly, which is decades instead of centuries, might shortly be resolved. And hopefully it's one that basically says that does one of those wink and a nod solutions where they say, Jerusalem is shared by all. It also just happens to be Israel. And those are two completely separate and coincidental things that in no way, shape, or form affect the other. And ideally, we'd see Jerusalem also offered to be the Palestinians' capital as well, which would certainly help. That would probably be one of the best things that could happen, where the state of Palestine is given a Jerusalem as its capital as well. put those things together, and I think we could see um,
Mhm.
if, another great step towards permanent peace in the region, as permanent as
They actually haven't.
a peace between two religions which have historically been very hostile to each other could ever exist. Yeah, it
Okay, yeah.
uh,
Well, I'd go back a
historically
little bit
meaning
further,
since
but pretty
1948
much.
in this context. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, or yeah, maybe
I'm
since
not
World
trying to
War
take this
One,
back to the
perhaps, if
Romans or anything.
that probably be a little bit more accurate. So I think, yeah, let's not go all the way back to when they were actually at peace, which would be a very nice time to return to. Um, but I think that we're going to. I think that the embassy moving will, at the very least, spark some change.
Mhm.
Um, what kind of change remains entirely to be determined. Whether it's a change that is um, that results in a more stable situation, um, or one that results in a continued escalation of the conflict remains to be seen. I think that right now, given that it seems to be shaping up roughly in the way that the 1999 original passage of the bill did, we're going to see it, the status
Mhm.
quo remain. I think we'll see that status quo remain. It's possible. You know, this is still very new. This is still new, and there haven't really been any policy papers. There haven't really been any debates, whether on the Palestinian or really the Israeli
I
side,
think they've actually
other
said they're
than, of
going
course,
to
the
delay this till
Palestinians saying,
2020
no, we
already.
don't like this, and the Israelis saying, yes, we do like this. And we haven't really seen,
Hmm. I think it's more of a
yeah,
publicity stunt
there,
than anything.
it's already being pushed back.
But
Um,
I mean, it has an impact though.
Probably to allow, yeah. Uh, if, yeah, I think we will see some change happen. I think we'll definitely see something happen as a result, um, rather than having to deal with what is essentially 16 years of nothing happening, um, which might, again, it might be good. I think we'd all like it to be good, but it's also possible that it
Hmm.
doesn't end well, which
Hmm.
ruins the
I
entire
think as long
point.
as the
Size.
old city remains the status quo, which I mean, I don't see how it's even really a status quo. I'm sure we can agree that it should just be the way that it is, and that's the best. I mean, whatever the solution is, that's part of the best solution. That it stays the same, and of course, that anyone can go there. Um, just, I think we're pretty much on the same page. Um, yeah, I mean, I really don't see where we disagree here, other than, I mean, for even as much as we agree. I mean, of course, there's little things we disagree on, but it's real small here and there. So I guess I just why do you think it's a good idea? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea because um, if it's a good idea because so far vindicated sees that the embassy is moving to West Jerusalem, and as nations do have a right to determine where their capital is. Um, it makes sense that we move it to West Jerusalem, or else we'll essentially be having to act in one way. Will The United States will basically be having to act in two ways for the almost an identical situation: Israel and Palestine in the Middle East, and China and Taiwan in the East, in the Far East. Where it's a similar situation where both sides claim that they are the real one, or in this case, Israel and Palestine say the real owners of Jerusalem. Um, but in the case of, and we
Hmm.
made a decision in the case of China versus Taiwan. We said it's China. Sorry, Taiwan. No offense. And in the case of Israel, in the case of Jerusalem, we never did. We could basically just said, we're just leaving that. We're leaving that as a thing. And it's important from a policy perspective to make these kinds of decisions. To say, yes, it is West Jerusalem, because really, That's basically where it comes down to. If you cares about West Jerusalem, and as long as it stays there, it will be okay. If the debate moves to East Jerusalem, I'm immediately taking your side, which is a bad idea. But as long as it stays within West Jerusalem, the Arab nations around
Mhm.
Israel don't really care about it. It's
Yeah, you break
almost
it up, and
Jerusalem in name
yeah, I'm
only.
not worried about West Jerusalem, and I think that's part of the Saudi Arabian peace plan that the Arab League is pushing for is that it would be a capital for both parties. I think that the Palestinians would have their capital on the Olive Mount, if I remember right, and the Israeli ones would remain where they are. But yeah, they're not happy about this move. The reason, of course, that I'm opposed to it is just because it's the goal that it was supposed to achieve hasn't been solved, and so it actually disrupts the peace process. But I guess that you could find a silver lining in saying that that it basically it makes it a lot easier for me to say, well, the eastern half of it's blocked in, so it's one state anyway. I, so it's easier to illustrate it as one state, and that is a problem. So it actually helps. And there's actually a silver lining on the oppositions on my side being an opposition side to the legislation. There's that silver lining that and there that it's easier for me to say because people might not believe me when I say that 96% of the land is already part of one side anyway, so it might as well just be one state. I think it makes it that a little bit easier to illustrate, and it's actually uniting the Palestinians because they don't have a unified government, and they've been trying to put one together that's nonviolent. So I think this will encourage that and a nonviolent way. So I mean maybe it will move us closer to peace. But the problem still being though that recently people have died over this and stuff, and it's really, and the Arab League is going to the United Nations and saying that they're not going to they're going to vote against both the United States and Israel. So it's having a negative impact, and it's more of a it is kind of a publicity stunt, but it's doing some damage to reputation. So that would be the big problem, and Jordan's also saying that they might not the way that they control the Christian and the Muslim holy sites, Al Aqsa Mosque, and um, the church the church there, which I won't remember the name of, but it's the same. That's it's kind of the same idea as Al Aqsa Mosque, where people actually believe this is where Jesus preached, and all these events in the Bible around the resurrection that they happened at this church, and I guess there's even some recent evidence that that's true. I'm not actually religious myself, but of course to Christians and a lot of Christians might not realize this, and so the Christians they're concerned about that site as well. And Jordan controls that. The Jordanese government controls that site. I think that they're really upset that Pence is going to go there, and because of all this, and they don't want him there. That might actually be, well, I guess it's too late for that to be happening now, but that might be a headline over there. um, so it's, yeah. So I mean, that's why I think it's a bad idea. Uh, so I pretty much we agree. I guess it's just a difference of opinion, but in a way, I mean, I mean, I hope that we could agree that maybe it will do some good for a peace process. However we would agree then on that.
Yeah, it would. I think it sets up a next step, which is okay. So our embassy for Israel is in West Jerusalem. Oh, by the way, it's also our embassy for the Palestinians. Which, if that happens, would be really nice because then that basically says the Arab League peace plan is the best. Because it is, but
Mhm.
that's
Yeah, we have to do
that,
another. We have only 5 minutes
another
left.
issue. If yeah, yeah, yeah. If that happens, if the United States essentially recognizes the state of Palestine, um, and this is same for both countries because it's in this, they have the same capital. So why are we like having two different embassy buildings? I think that would be well received. because then you're agreeing to the existence of the Palestinian state. And the reason why I say that might be possible is because Donald Trump's announcement that the embassy is moving was in direct contradiction of the original 1995 bill, which referred to an undivided Jerusalem. And then Trump's statement explicitly said not an undivided Jerusalem, which then raised the question of, so what is he thinking? Like, did someone, like whoever his speechwriter is, or if he wrote the speech himself, whoever knows, either forget that the original text said that, or does this signal a policy change, which would be very good, because if it does signal a policy change, then that's another step towards peace. It's yeah. So if we see that, it actually officially U.S. policy is always wrong. They don't get it and left it. But if they become much stronger about that and say, no, pull your people back, you don't get it. You get West Jerusalem all you want, just not East. I think that would really encourage peacemakers on both sides, that the U.S. is finally taking action, because ever since I'd venture to say Camp David, the United States has not taken action. Official U.S. policy has just been, okay, Israel and Palestine, do whatever you want. We don't really.
Mm-hmm.
From a peace point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with those points. For the most part, well, yeah, pretty much. I think, we're pretty much in agreement here. I think the amount of aid that the U.S. gives, though, and of course this would all end up being another debate as well, does give the United States a huge stake in this, though, and I mean, that is our stake in it. I think without the aid, you could make that argument that we don't have a stake in it, but we obviously do, because of the amount of aid that we give. And the United Nations too, being that we basically are we fund the United Nations. We basically are the United Nations. So that, and we're part of the Security Council in the United Nations. So that would be another argument that we have a stake in it, and I mean, there's a cost to this. And I mean, hopefully the Arab League, since that is such a powerful group of Arab countries, that maybe they would see your argument for a positive, and that this could move toward the peace plan that they want. Because I guess that it is very interesting that the bill itself says that it's undivided, and then Trump saying that it won't be divided. I mean, that might just be hyperbole, but that might be he's met with the Saudis. The Saudis are moving closer to Israel as this is happening. So it would be a barrier. So I mean, maybe that is their plan. I don't, but for the reason I illustrated earlier, though, I don't know much, and I don't know much about the plan, so I don't want to just shoot it down. But I'm just going to say that my bias is that it pretty much is one state, and that's the way that we're just going to have to look at. We're going to have to look at solving it is as one state, and the United States would be the example. And I think you talked about Texas. Or I don't know if you talked about, maybe I know you talked about China and Taiwan, but of course the United States, we stole Texas, and we stole all of our land actually. But yeah, eventually it's all annexed, and we've done things to help the indigenous people. Someone will say that we haven't, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, pretty much we agree. I don't know if you want to throw a close on.
Just to close, I think that I think that the end of the debate, or the end of any discussion, really, determine where this is going to go.